Well, hello, Facebook and YouTube and wherever else you might find us today. I'm super excited about this conversation. If you could do me a favor and like this, share it, tag 17 people, then we'll be good to go. Thank y'all for everybody who messaged us and said mute your mics because I was totally talking when we first put the slide up. Isn't God good? Look at that. So if y'all could do me a favor, go ahead and like it and share it and all that good stuff. And we'll be talking to you and taking questions from the chat. You don't have to wait until we open up for questions. Whenever you're ready for questions, just go ahead and put them in there and we will catch it and answer your questions. I want to introduce my friends and the people I love in life. That always makes this so easy. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce each person. I'm going to give them the opportunity to tell you a little bit about them. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. And unfortunately, Bishop McKissick is preaching tonight. And so he played us. I'm just kidding. He really did forget he was preaching tonight, but that's okay. We'll have him on another month. But today we're talking about congregations. If you know, I am the lead researcher of the State of the Black Church study done by the Barna Group. And I'm super excited. We've gone 21 years. Without this type of data. And it is, I mean, the Black communities altogether are a data deficit, right? We're in a data deficit. And, you know, that's just kind of how it goes. You can always find negative statistics on us, but it's very difficult to find the statistics that allow us to go to the bank or to get a grant and stop using anecdotal evidence. And so I'm really excited about this. I'm excited to talk about it. Of course, we always have a webinar coming up every month. That is going to be State of the Black Church congregations. But I'm going to introduce my guests. Let them tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to get right into it. My first guest is someone I've known maybe, I don't know how long I've known Dr. McCLendon at this point. I think we met when I was doing Edge. Did we? Is that how we met?
I think so.
I think that's how we met. I knew her before she had a baby. I knew her before she was married and maybe before you were engaged, maybe. I don't know. But
I think so.
That's
I think Caleb and I were dating or something like that.
See, look at this. So anyway, Dr. McCLendon is going to introduce herself, and she's going to bring us an amazing lens and perspective that I don't think we get to see much at all. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Well, hey, everybody. I knew Reverend Bree before she was famous. No, I'm just playing. I'm so honored to be here with you. I'm Dr. Lesley Francisco McCLendon. I serve as senior pastor of C3, Calvary Community Church in Hampton, Virginia. I actually, just a couple months ago, celebrated my 1-year anniversary. So I assumed the leadership role in the middle of a pandemic. I'm actually a third generation succession story. So my story was really interesting. I kind of took the reins of the church like 2 months after my grandma, our founder, passed away. So it was a very difficult time. But other than that, I am a wife of 6 years to Caleb. I have one young son, Jackson Alexander Francisco McCLendon. He's got all the names. So legacy is pretty important to me. And I absolutely love family. I love God. I love church. I love people. And just a little insight, learning a little bit about like golfing and things like that. So I also like to learn new things, and I'm excited about this conversation today.
And we're excited to have you. Next, I'm going to save the, fan favorite, everybody's favorite for last. Let me go to my friend who I met on accident. When I tell you I met Ruth on accident, let me tell you something. Reverend Wynter accidentally found me. I accidentally thought she was contacting me for another reason. We ended up working together on something completely different, and we've been friends ever since. It was the most random Saturday morning email exchange. Yeah, it was really wild, but I'm really so happy to have met her, been able to spend time with her and call her friend. So go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Well, I met Reverend Bree after she became famous. So I'm,
no, gotta knock that off.
But I was able to locate her in a desperate time. Reverend Ruth Wynter, I'm the executive pastor at Bethel Gospel Assembly in Harlem, New York. And I came into the role just before the pandemic. Came into the role in November of 2019. And, having to suddenly figure out church in the role. The role had just been created. There'd never been a role before, and trying to figure out all of this stuff and trying to figure it out in a pandemic. And thank God for Reverend Bree, and taught me how to survey the people that they need and all of that stuff. I am bivocational. In addition to ministry, I have the wonderful joy of working in the entertainment industry and have been there for about 15 years now. And so I think COVID has changed both sides of my life tremendously in the last year. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because I do think nothing is coincidental, nothing is accidental. And so even this time tonight is definitely going to be ordained, and I'm sure we'll have a great time as well.
Absolutely. And next up, let me tell you, people can say they're your friend. They can say they're your big brother, but it only means something when they're willing to support your work. And I am most grateful for Dr. Goodman for being so supportive at all times of my work. So I'm going to let you hear a little bit about him. Please no DMs. And I mean that so seriously. Do not DM me about him. Go ahead, Dr. Goodman.
That is hilarious. I too knew Bree before she was famous. No, ever since I known Bree, she's been famous.
That is not even.
But I want to give her a major shout out. She's doing some very monumental work that's important for the Black church. And I love the Black church, and I'm apologist for the Black church. I believe the Black church is the hope of American Christianity. That's just my heart. And so to be a part of this conversation is so significant. And those who are tuning in, we have work to do. Once again, I pastor the Tabernacle Church in Augusta, Georgia, CSRA. What's up, Tab? And wonderful partnership the last 14 years. Our church is celebrating 136 years this year. And we've been, like everybody else, trying to navigate COVID, planning for reentry, hopefully within the next few weeks. But this Delta variant and these unvaccinated people and a whole lot of other stuff that's going on, I'm just at a weird space. So I look forward to us having a conversation. But one thing I do believe, no matter what happens, just still remain faithful. God is still good. And so I think that what we're going to discuss and the conversation and the webinars that I think you're doing, Reverend Bree, is very, very, very important and powerful. So thank you again for creating this platform and allowing our voices to be heard, but also a lot of people to just get more information.
Yeah. Listen, it's my pleasure. When I thought about this conversation, I wanted to bring you all here for different reasons. I think, Dr. Goodman is in a different kind of place because when we were doing the research, everybody kept saying, are you going to do rural areas? Are you going to do rural areas? And I'm like, absolutely. Don't just do metropolitan cities. But if you've ever been to Tabernacle, I know you count maybe geographically. Do they consider Augusta rural?
No, we city, man. We city people, man. We got about 200,000 people, man. Y'all gonna start respecting Augusta, Georgia, man. Y'all gonna we're the second largest city in Georgia.
Is that true? Really? I'm so
we
sorry.
Are. Now, this new census, I'm not sure. We be battling back and forth with Macon, but we a big city, man. Y'all gonna stop trying to trip and act like it's Atlanta and everybody else.
No, but this is what I'm saying. While I don't think people think of Augusta as a city, right? But Tabernacle is definitely not a rural church, is where I was going. So even when we think we are including everyone, you know what I mean? Like it while data is important and it should be a guide, right? We also have to remember there are a number of things that a good researcher will do to try to make sure everyone is included. When we have some data, we can mine it, right? I can look at the data and say, oh, this is what's happening in the Northeast because it's very different from the South, right? Or this is what's happening in, there are multiple Southern type of context, right? People will tell you Texas isn't the South. Some people think we're actually the Southwest and we don't even belong in like Southern conversations. When you talk about Florida from Texas, that's very different. Alabama from, like Georgia, I think is still pretty different. And so we really try to make sure we have, covered as much as we could. So we did rural areas, right? We did metropolitan cities. We were hoping to get as much as we could on younger pastors like Dr. McCLendon. That was important. We worked really hard to make sure we could get good information on women in ministry. That was super important to us. One thing we got to find out when we were looking at congregations was that somehow, and don't forget when we talk about Gen Z, so when I talk about millennials and Gen Z together, I call them emerging generations, right? When I talk about Gen Z, you have to remember we could only even research Gen Z. They were at that point 23 to 17. Today they're 23 to 18, but today they're 24 to 18 because we have to be able to look at adults. So when people are selling you this Gen Z information, please remember it is not legit because we don't know them yet. We don't know enough about them. That's why they don't even have a name yet, because we have to actually see who they are before we can even, accurately name them or appropriately name them. And so tell us this. I want everybody to kind of tell me from your context, from your lens, if you weren't a pastor, right? How you think you fit into the current congregation. Hybrid is, we're a hybrid congregation, many of us right now, or some of us are still completely virtual. We're always in flux. There are a number of churches who decided they didn't have to be, but the pandemic doesn't give us a choice. Like, where do you find yourself today? We can start with Reverend Wynter. How do you think single women fit into congregations right now?
I think the definition of community has really shifted for everyone. And I think for singles in general, especially for single women have had so much responsibility in the life of the church, in the life of the local church. Your Sunday school teachers, your choir directors, your administrators, your assistants, staff, youth workers. So there was a lot of work that needed to be done that demanded a lot of time from single women. So now that, either buildings are shut down or, hybrids and all of these restrictions, I think for a lot of single women, there's this moment of redefining themselves. So many people, and we could get into a debate as to whether it's healthy or not. So many people merge their identity with their ministry. And so now this whole portion of their life is gone. And so I think for a lot of single women, this is the time of reemerging, re-identifying yourself. Who does God really say you are? Separate from who the church needs you to be, because those are not necessarily one and the same. And then reintroducing themselves into the context of ministry. I think for a lot of people, it's a great opportunity. It's a great moment, but it requires courage, right? Because you're facing life in a completely different way. And so I think good pastors are helping their congregations and their populations navigate that journey. The isolation of being alone was also big, I think, for a lot of people. So now, how do you re-engage in society and in community? So I think that to me is the biggest differentiating factor in this congregational conversation right now.
Yeah, I think COVID really did mess up identity for Black people in the church. I mean, you have to remember that sometimes that was the only place where we got a title. That was the only place we had respect, responsibility, opportunity. We're no longer able to have our seat. And sometimes that's about being seen, which I don't even clown people for that, right? We need to be seen in this world. We want to be seen. If you can't get that in one place, you get in the next. And so sometimes, people kind of act out to be seen, but we've seen it so much, right? But this time you don't have your seat on the second row. You can't go and shake the pastor's hand every single Sunday. You know what I mean? Like, those things you couldn't do to be seen. You didn't maybe have the title, or if you had it, maybe what you did wasn't as needed in a virtual world. So I think that whole identity piece is real for people, specifically in the Black church where we've needed it most. Dr. Goodman, how are single men situated in congregations these days?
I think when you asked me the question and I really began to ponder it, I'll be very honest. I think we're going to have a harder time after this to attract men. Simply because, and it's no fault of our own, I think it's just when the 2020 election came out and they started to break down the demographic, right? There was the numbers that said more Black men than last time voted for Donald Trump, right? And so there was a lot of questions about why was that? Why is this phenomenon? And it was a lot of different things. I could make the argument that I do think the numbers were skewed because a lot of people did not vote in the polls as much as they did absentee voting. But it made me start to really ponder and think and start doing some unofficial, non-scientific kind of research with some friends. And I think part of the challenge, if we were to boil it down to even Black men, there is a challenge in spaces where we're not feeling like we're catered to, or having a similar piece of the pie. There is something to be said. I mean, this is a whole nother conversation about how we are redefining and reimagining masculinity and what that looks like as far as finding our space. I know there's a major push, and I understand. I'm with it. I understand attacking patriarchy within the church, specifically the Black church. We see a little more centering of our LGBTQIA brothers and sisters, and the importance of that, which I'm all for as well. But the challenge with that centering of others is that for men, especially, where do we fit in? What do we offer that's going to say you have space to be a man here as well, right? And that's something that I don't think we really talk about, you know. And I'm not sure if the way the church is currently constructed, if we have the right offerings to attract men in a way that they will want to come and be connected to now, especially if new rituals have been developed, routines have kind of been cemented over a year and a half, where I can get it, you know, when I want it. You know, content consumption is different. I don't need to be there live on Sunday. I can get the rebroadcast on Tuesday. I don't have to be in the sanctuary, you know. And so I think that's the critical question that, honestly, Bree, I don't think I have an answer to, and one that I really am trying to parse out. And I look forward to talking to more about it, because I do think that is the challenge. And oftentimes, truth be told, man, we're ego. There's a lot of that goes into who we are. And when we don't feel that significance, if we're no longer getting the big piece of the chicken at the table, you know, what does it look like sharing this space? And we can argue about right or wrong and all the other stuff. And you should, you know, and I'm with it, but I'm just saying, I think my unofficial conversations with brothers is like, you know, it's cool. I mean, you know, everybody else is getting centered and everyone else is being raised up. And that's great. And that's wonderful. As a pastor, I appreciate it. As a man, I can see how some would say, well, where do I fit in?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, that's what I'm thinking. So I know it didn't answer your question, but because I felt like when you asked me that, I raised more questions. And I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I really have no idea. Yeah, I really have no idea. Yeah,
and let's just be honest. You know, Black churches were struggling, you know, to cater to men, or to, I won't say cater to, because I know people go like, they cater to men. I get it. Struggling to attract men, right?
Yeah. Which is crazy, because Tab, we have about 42% men.
Wow.
I was going to tell you why I could see that, but I don't know if that's an appropriate conversation, you know, for this. Well, no, I can say what I want to say. It's mine. I think it really helps when you have a relatable man, right? You're not like churchy in a 17-piece suit, you know, an attractive man, because whatever else people want to say, people are attracted to attractive people. Like whatever you want to say, that's what happens. And
I'm intentional in preaching to affirm men. I try to affirm everyone, but I will say I do make sure I'm gonna use sport analogies in my communication. They know I love the Eagles. I'm gonna raise some stuff that I know men want to talk about. You know what I mean? Not trying to be funny. I'm intentional about that. They're gonna see me in my J's, and they're also gonna see me try to model manhood in a way that's cool. And like, hey man, I can rock with PG. You know, that's my dude. So I can see that. I can see that.
I think it's real. And I think we are not honest about a number of reasons. Men may not be comfortable in the church. And while we talk about men being centered in the church, we have to remember certain men are centered in the church. You know what I mean? But there are tons who can be in the congregation and never even spoken to or of. You know what I mean? So we always have to remember that man. When I served a mega church for almost 10 years, and I started dating this guy, and I had a rule. I don't date people I go to church with. I started dating this guy, and finally I was like, you know, because it's not one of my first questions. So after a couple of days, I'm like, oh, you know, you go to church? You know, what church you go to? He was like, yeah, I go to this small church in Oak Cliff. I'm like, cool. You know, I work in Oak Cliff. What's the name of the church? He was like, Friendship West. I was like, what now? Like, are you kidding me? Like, he even knew who I was. So I had some problems. He didn't say that, right? But he was faithful at church. He was there on Sundays and Wednesday nights. And ain't nobody in church on Wednesday nights, but he sat in the back intentionally in the dark, like so that you would even see him. And that just shows you how somebody can go completely unknown. I mean, he was even going there when we were dating early on, and I did not see him. And so we need to stop pretending like all men are, like catered to. And it's a certain man or men in leadership or men with high paying jobs or certain education, those men. And so I was at City Point in Chicago, and they were going to a basketball game. We've always seen, churches go to basketball games, but they had seats that were like $100 something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? But guess what? That men's event was, I think it was men. Yeah, men and boys. It was sold out. Like they had no problem selling those tickets. And I think even something that's a little different like that, which is a millennial church.
I took my men to a football game. We go to football
but I bet you weren't getting those $10 seats. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to cater to men, you have to get what men want. And men are trying to do have luxury experiences. And so I think even simple stuff like that we forget can really tip the scale for our events. Go ahead and tell us, Dr. McCLendon, where you see young married families situated in congregations these days.
That's interesting. I don't know if I see a lot of them. Hopefully my story is a bit different. I got married at 26, so I was relatively young. And I got married because I wanted to, not because I was forced to or strongly encouraged to. And church culture, like as soon as you come out of college, if you go to college, like who you dating, when you're getting married, there's so much pressure.
I'm disappointing everybody. I know.
And then after you get married, are you having kids? I mean, it's crazy. And so I think that married people are looking for a community where they can fit, that appreciates their desire that they chose to be married as well, and not just forced into it. Okay. And also, I really do, like I said, feel like in church, there's a lot of pressure to rush to marriage. So my perspective is different because I feel as a young woman in ministry, I'm a bit more grace-based when it comes to families. When I think about that from that perspective, whether they're single, married, divorced, or whatever. And so for me, personally, and I think other young married people would identify with this, I love showing that marriage, and specifically young marriage, does not have to be stereotypical, right? And so in the way that we are now, long gone are the days where we have stereotypical gender roles. Like I've been married for 6 years. My husband washes the clothes, right? And I do some things that's like, wait, you do, he does what? And so I think that there are more people that are like that in the church right now. And being able to defy some of those odds, I think that there are more young married couples that are looking for those things. And so also, as far as being plugged in, I think married people now are going to be into hybrid. That's where I would fit in if I weren't a pastor, right? I'd spend half of the month serving or attending church, and the other half I'd be doing brunch dates with my spouse. And that's just being honest. And so I think also, even if you bring in, I have a young son, like if you bring a kid into the mix, it's like, okay, well, this is a whole different dynamic, right? So I'm going to see congregations from the aspect of families. Like if I'm heavily family oriented, what's the children's ministry looking like, or youth ministry, right? Even like, is this going to be a place where I can worship with, my babies and their babies with their great grands? So I think we're looking at things from a totally different perspective. But specifically, I think for young married people, I even had to adjust my expectations to the pastor and say faithful church attendance is no longer 4 times a month. Like you just might as well get that out your head now. And it helped me a lot.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this when we were at the table a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be important that we set the standards for what a hybrid disciple looks like. I tell my clients, you have to tell them how many times you want them to grace the building and still be considered an active member or a disciple. You're going to have to be honest about how many times you want them to watch live versus watching archive. How many times you want them to attend, like discipleship classes, because some people have 53 classes going on, and that's just too much anyway. But I think we're going to have to set new standards for people who are trying to be active or trying to be disciple. disciples, but want to do it in a hybrid way, because if not, you're going to leave them to make their own decisions. You know what I mean? And I'm just going to decide to get ready watch while I'm getting ready for brunch. And then I'm gonna, like finish it up at the table. So I don't have, I can miss the church people. Like, we're going to have to really set those standards. Another thing you said, Lesley, which is something we got to see when we were looking at the data, you talked about parents, what is the children's ministry like? And I hope everybody hears me when I say this. When we looked at ministry and when people felt best at church, or they were the most valuable time in church, we got to see it was children's ministry and youth ministry. At first it was like, oh, okay, cool. And the more we looked into this or tried to get down to the bottom of it and we're having conversations, the more I realized it's because those are the only stages where you have real programming.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So you really don't have programming after that. And my second book on this research is going to talk about life stage ministry and how that's the new wave of the church. That's going to have to be the future. We go through too much by ourselves. And if we don't have life stage ministry for people to walk with us and journey with us, I think that's how we fall away and find somebody who understands us, somebody who's at the same life stage, like quarter life crisis, right? You're 25, life is not happening like you thought it was. It looks nothing like Friends. If it looks like living single, you probably Khadijah because you broke, you know what I mean? But you went to school, you tried to get a good job, all those things. And so that's a life stage that I think we need to honor. Early marriage is a life stage versus empty nesters. That's a different life stage. When you feel, that 40 something, or when you hit your real stride in your career, that's a different life stage. I think being a single man, those are life stages, but not about relationship. The other stuff that we need to talk about when we're single, like every time people talk about singleness, they want to hook you up.
They group it into a category.
I'm like, please don't talk to me about relationships. I want to be selfish right now. I ain't trying to pray for nobody, build nobody up, hear nobody's dreams, but I am trying to make all mine come true. What you got for that? So I think we're going to have to really think through programming. Something else I saw based on what you said is parents seem to appreciate ministry most either when they were younger, maybe children or youth, or when their kids are in children and youth, because then they have programming, because adults start to do things together while their children are together. So we need to think about what that means for parents who have actively involved children. But I want y'all to hear this because I think it is so hilarious. When we were looking at the data, we asked people how often, right, they attend church. Over the past year, we asked, on average, did you attend worship service? 51% of the people said they went weekly.
Oh.
Wow.
That's higher than I thought.
22.
That's higher than I thought.
That's much higher.
They're lying. I want you to know.
Okay, I was shocked by that.
No, because we need to remember whenever all the statistics we look at about Black people, and we always outpace the rest of America in biblical literacy, or how much we read the Bible, how much we go to church or as believers, right? We always outpace the country. We really want to be seen as churchgoers. This is why I want you to know this. More than it being accurate, I want you to know this is how people want to be seen. If they want to be seen like this and you give them the opportunity, they will live into this. That's why I want to share this data. So 51% of the people said they were there weekly. 22% of the people said they were there 2 or 3 times a month.
I thought that would be more accurate.
It probably is. 11% of the people said they went 1 time a month. 7% said they went, once every 2 months. I'm sorry, once every 2 or 3 months was 9%. 1 time a month was 11%. And then 7% was people who said they went once every 6 months. I know once every 6 months is more than 7%. Yeah. But this is how people want to be seen. 51% of the people want to be seen as weekly churchgoers. Yeah. Wow. Which means if we give them the opportunity, they will be weekly churchgoers. And we have to acknowledge that sometimes it's hard for people to find their fit in churches. So if you could think of how church has evolved, or maybe devolved, right? It could be either one. How church has changed over the last 10 years. Give me... First of all, Akeem, knock it off, because I am in church regularly, and don't ask about the percentage of it I give. Thank you very much. Get out the chat being petty. But if you had to think about one thing that has changed drastically that may impact attendance negatively and positively over the last 10 years, what would it be? And you can just answer negative, positive, whenever you can think of it. You don't have to go one by one.
Streaming.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wait,
if we're gonna-
is that negatively impacted or positive?
Depends on your framework of ministry.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're only concerned about getting people in the building, then it's negative. If you are concerned about getting the message out and connecting and trying to put positive things out there, then it's a positive. So it's really the perspective of the person and who's leading. I think streaming has changed the game, and there's a whole myriad of what's that going to produce. And I don't even think we really touched or tapped into what that all looks like, because then you go into the streaming piece. Here's the other thing. I think the future of church is not always going to be in this live experience.
Absolutely.
Because once again, it's about getting content out there, if that's the aim, right? And so people may not watch you on Sunday morning. So you may be discouraged by your live views, but then by the time the week gets done, your views have tripled.
Yeah.
Because people consume content differently now. We're in the Netflix world.
Yep.
We will binge watch. You know, when I was a kid, you had to be at the house by 8:55 in order to see the Cosby Show. And you had to be there to see it, right? I mean, that was it. And if you didn't get there in time or missed it, you may hear the people talk about tomorrow, but you don't know when the rerun was coming. You don't know when I was coming back. Now, listen, Netflix, I was just shooting around last night and watched the whole series. I watched the whole season, sitting there working on one paper, and then watched a season of something.
Yeah.
So I think that's the game changer right now. That's the game changer. So streaming.
And don't forget this though. We have people who wait and watch the whole season. They will let it go by live and wait and watch it back to back. That's a thing. But I even think when we talk about content, we have to think about what we really want to do and see. If you like, some people like clown people, right? When they boost their services, right? I don't think that is bad, especially if you look and you see you have through views. If they're actually watching the whole thing, that means they needed it to come across their timeline. But they do want your content. And most people won't boost it because they feel like, oh, then I'm trying to add to my numbers. But that also tells me you don't care if your content reaches people or not, because boosting it is not bad if you think it's valuable and people need it.
Right.
And I think, this whole notch on your belt, that's how we treat these views, like I had 5,000 people watching, like that's a thing. But I don't think we're really valuing. I think we forget to value that we're actually doing something for people, that we're changing their lives through this and not just trying to stroke our ego. I also think streaming can hurt the church and has hurt churches, because if you were bootleg, raggedy, talking crazy, and you were streaming it, I would have rather have an experience and love the people and didn't really like every part of the service versus having to see y'all just crazy in there. Y'all just talking crazy.
Well, that's.
And I will say over the last decade. Oh, do you want to go ahead? Or over the last decade, it forced us to be more tech savvy. To some, it's a pro. To others, it's a con. But I say all that to say, no longer do we really live in a society as much that puts the man or woman of God on a pedestal as much as they used to. So not saying it doesn't happen, but I would say a decade or more ago, you could take what was said on the pulpit as fact. But now that we're streaming, now that we have technology, you got people in the pews fact checking you on Google while you saying stuff like, cite your sources. That ain't right. Like, that's not accurate. I'm not sure if I agree. And, similar responses to it. But like you said, there's also a positive to that too. We can use technology to reach infinitely more people than we could before. And I do think that for a lot of our congregants and leaders, that's going to be a mindset shift that we aren't used to.
I think I was going to say, to kind of sum up what everyone is saying, I think there is this tension between technology and tradition. I think there's a lot more synergy than we want to embrace. So, we talk about views and what that means. And it's the same race to get butts in the seats. It was how many do you have at your service, Doc? And how many, So a lot of it is, I think we see the technology as antithetical to traditions, and it's not necessarily that. So it can be a positive. and it can be a negative. Depends on how you decide to embrace it. The fact is, everything in society is consumed differently. The music industry went through the whole upheaval. You spent $100,000 to make a record, knowing that you're gonna sell it for $9.99 or $10.99. But now I download the song I want, and maybe I don't want any of the song on your record. So you're in the hole, right? So it's all about how people are consuming content. And it's the same way when you put your sermon. How do I consume your sermon? If your sermon is 2 hours long, the bad thing was when they were in the building, they couldn't walk out on you. Now they
swipe up,
you know, or
but don't forget,
I would push back.
We've just had this conversation. You want to talk about it? Want me to talk about it?
I think longer. I really think you can be longer now.
No, but I think you can.
It depends, though, right?
If your content is engaging.
I was just about to say,
right. No, I think that's
exactly.
Because I'll listen to a 2-hour podcast while I'm in the gym. While I'm in the gym, riding home, I'll then put it on my speakers when I'm taking a shower. I get out, eat, and still have it going. So it just, I agree with what you said. It has to be engaging.
Yeah. The catch is, I don't know if I'm trying to say this nicely. I don't know if in the past you had to have an engaging sermon.
You did.
Okay. You had a captive audience, right? So
it never stuck there unless you're gonna just get up and walk down the center aisle and embarrass yourself.
And now there is more intentionality that has to go into what we're preaching. Because somebody is fact checking. Yeah. Because people, there's some things that we tolerate. You and your girlfriends will say certain things and it's okay. But now you're saying it to an audience that doesn't know your inside jokes, doesn't necessarily understand why are you letting that happen? What does that mean? So all of that, broadening of our audience comes with, some more work and responsibility on our side. And so I think if we are saying that we want to reach people with the gospel, which is what church people say, then the tension should not be something that we're so afraid of.
Yeah.
Bree, can I say something that I would love to hear other panelists talk about? I don't know if it's the past 10 years, but I've seen this. I will say the centering of our children has drastically changed church. Let me put that in a couple ways. Yes. When I was growing up, I ain't had no choice. I'm going to youth Bible study. I'm going to youth choir rehearsal. Yeah. I'm going to church. Now, there's a more centering where before our family built our lives around the church. Now the church has to build its life around the people. I know some good people who will miss church because their children have games on the weekend. They have other things that they have to do. And that has drastically really kind of determined their church participation and to a certain degree, also their church attendance. I also know some good families who, honestly, when I was growing up, my friends were at church. My associates were at school. Now it has changed where the children, our kids, their associates are at church.
They don't know them people.
And their friends are at school. So I have no incentive to go to your youth Bible study because I don't know nobody there. And I'll go with my friends to where they go. Yeah. And here's the reality for Black people: as we've accumulated and we have grown and we have moved out the ghetto like the Jeffersons and moved up. And so we went to all these wonderful Black schools, but we got these great jobs, moved into these mixed neighborhoods. Well, not really mixed, and we send our kids to schools where they're minorities. At the end of the day, that has really psychologically, I think, affected church, because I will get a lot of people tell me, Bree, the church is the only place I go where there's only one homogeneous demographic. Yeah. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I think the centering of our children, however you want to perceive that. Now, from a leadership perspective, it's struggle because I don't know who all is going to come. What all can I provide? From a family perspective, then it's got to be great. But I think that's something that has happened. It's not more than 10 years, but it's got to be something that I think we really need to take a look at.
I live in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and when I got here, the kids didn't used to get homework on Wednesdays, and they had no after school activities because that was Bible study day. Literally, when I got here 12 years ago, I think it was 13 years ago, that's how it was. Now Sugar, what you want to do? I think we have to, and let me go ahead and give some practical help with things like this. We're going to have to, first of all, you go with the flow because we don't have enough clout, right, to counter these things that are going on. We haven't been in the game like that, right? So you go with the flow. So that means you sponsor some of these leagues so that you can have relationships. You know, if you have the clout and you have a coach or you have somebody who was an ex-player, you use them and you make them a coach and you start your team, whatever you have to do, but you don't go against the grain. And let me say this, you don't start a team against amazing teams. You start a team if you just happen to have, I don't know anything about sports, but if I had like Larry Fitzgerald, he retired and he was willing to coach a team, we're going to raise this money and we're going to coach a team because Larry Fitzgerald's in my congregation. He's retired and he was awesome. So we know we're actual contenders. Until you can be a contender, you sponsor, you bring snacks, you bring food, you just become the cheerleaders. Maybe that's all your children's ministry does is, you know, you assign them the games to go to and support the people who are there. You do not go against the grain. You don't do that until you have the clout to counter it. And that's what we try to do. Oh, really? I'm not going to watch no Scandal. I'm going to have a Bible study on Thursday night. Shame on you. You might want to have one after Scandal and talk about it back in the day. You know what I mean? Or right before Insecure. But you don't push against something that you don't have the clout to really contend against. And I think that's what we do in churches all too much. I also looked at this point when I was looking at the data, and I ended up writing this in my feature. Millennials and Gen Z did not give up on the church. Boomers and X did. And we see that because if they loved the church, they would have made their children go.
Absolutely.
If they believed in it, for real. Absolutely. They would not have given them a choice. They wouldn't have told them you don't have to go. They actually had the issue, but because they kept coming, we ignored it. We didn't ask them how they felt. The whole time I was doing this data, I kept saying, who pissed off boomers? That's what I kept writing in the margins. Who pissed off boomers? Nobody was more disappointed in the church than boomers. Generation Z actually have a pretty positive attitude, even more positive than millennials. But boomers, you talk about pissed with the lack of progress, the lack of progress we've had in civic engagement and policy. That's boomers. And so I think boomers actually were the ones to give up. And that's why we see it in younger generations, more than younger generations giving up, you know, on the church. But I think that was a great point to raise. I definitely think that's changed in the last 10 plus or somewhere around that in those years. And I also understand what you're saying too. Like, how do I put money into something that is not going well for me? You know what I mean? Like, you know, there are other people who want their attention. So that's why I say you give that money, you know, to people. I also want us to think about this. If y'all would do me a favor, Dr. McCLendon, Dr. Goodman, please do this. Can you please just take the sermon portion of your sermon? Both of you guys, I think, can do this. I'm not saying everybody can. And until you're there, don't do it now. But both of you guys can take those, cut them, and make them a podcast. I can go listen to any white pastor.
Yeah, that's true.
For real, I can go listen. And it's totally fine. But if I'm looking for black pastors, I cannot find just preaching. But when you title it, I want you to title like this. Don't give us that great sermon title you did. Do instead what to do about grief. Do it simple. So when I'm just looking through podcasts and I search grief, you're gonna come up for me.
It's a great idea.
You know what I mean? Like, please do that for me, because I remember I'm not a fan of white preachers. I'm not gonna pretend like I am. But when I was really going through something and I needed to get, like, you know, some kind of word, understanding, just calm my fears, something, I would go on those podcasts. And sometimes I ain't even gonna lie. One time I was listening to Joel Osteen. I just need to believe it's gonna be all right. And Joel Osteen is not my favorite. I also don't think he's horrible. I think that's for people in a certain place in life. But I never would have been listening to Joel Osteen if I would have had Goody as an opportunity. But that doesn't exist in podcast world.
Yeah. No, I think what you said is different. Excuse me, Rev. I think that's good, because it also, this pandemic has also, we have recentered proclamation. And if we'll be honest, man, I've learned through even people who view us online, I mean, they love our worship, but you know, I think I saw one church that did something I thought was incredible. They had a run sheet that they posted at the beginning.
Oh, I think you should.
So you'll know when the sermon is.
Every that's clients, I tell them, but this is the thing. It's not always a sermon, and you got to be honest with yourself. Some people out there know. they stay for the sermon, but they come for your choir.
Mhm.
Whatever it is the people want, tell
Yeah.
them when to click on.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with not telling them what's happening about, the approximate time things are happening. If they click on and they're just waiting for your sermon and they got to listen to this song, I'm out. Don't worry about it. And they might come back when you got 7 minutes left in the sermon because they'll get distracted. If you tell them when to come on and they know they just have to wait about another minute because y'all are off a little bit, then they don't mind staying. We have to give the people what they want and then let the other stuff flow into it. Like, it's like YouTube. That's why YouTube changed the way they do things. Like, I got tired of those bloggers. They tell me they're going to tell me about how to, like, help my dark circles under my eyes. And then I got to sit through 47 minutes of content. I'm fast forwarding and I'm missing it, But now they tell you, I'm going to describe it at this point. I'm going to tell you why it's like this at this point. I'm going to tell you how to apply it so and you can fast forward. Everybody don't want everything. Yes. Speaking of everybody not wanting everything, I want us to know when we were asking people about what they believe, we got to see some pretty interesting statistics. And Charlie Dates always tells people that I hurt his feelings when I told him that his church members don't even believe what he believes. And they don't even believe, everything he says. They don't. That's just what happens in churches. But when we were asking them, like, really what you believe about God and God being all powerful, all knowing, perfect creator of the universe who rules the world today, we wanted to see where they were and how they felt about this question alone. And we got to see some pretty interesting statistics. Yeah, when we got agree strongly, people who agree strongly with that statement, Gen Z only believed it at 33%.
Wow. But
you should know boomers only believed it at 37%.
Really?
Wow.
And elders older than boomers only believed it at 32%.
Wow.
Gen X at 36% and millennials at 30%.
Wow. That one central theme of our faith.
The one central theme of our faith. But these are people who keep going. See, I think we mess up when we think because people go, they believe. The data told us one of the reasons people go most is because they need fellowship. The same way it's the only place where you go and that's not diverse could be negative. It's also the positive. When you're hurting, when white people at your job getting on your nerves with microaggressions and stuff, you go to the Black church.
Sure.
Even if you go to a white church during election season, you go to a Black one because you don't want to hear all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are so many reasons. If you move into a new town or a new state, and you need to see where Black people are, you go to church. I live in a small town, Mansfield, Texas, right? It's a very small town. It'll stay small, and I like it like that. It's outside of Dallas. But one thing I do know is if I wanted to be around Black people, I know where to go. And it would start at Bethlehem, who has a senior center. They have a daycare. They have a church. Like, if I just want to see Black people in my town, I knew where to go. I know where they are. And so it's so tricky because it's like the great thing about us. And then for some people who are so progressive, it's not the greatest part about us. But how do y'all feel about knowing that your members, only a third of your members are actually out there feeling like God is all powerful, all knowing, creator?
It shocked me. In my head, I was adding up 33, trying to get it to 100. But wow.
Yeah, no, that's the breakdown of generations. So it wouldn't even.
I thought I was going to hear like 60 or close to the 52 again, but
I don't think it's that surprising. I think that the fact is, I think. Pastor Goodman, you said it, right? This is the core part of our faith, the central facet of our faith. And I think over time, we've gotten caught up in so many other arguments and doctrines and things we disagree on. And
oh, wait, no, you guys, I'm wrong.
Oh, okay.
I'm wrong. Sorry. I'm looking
lower.
Yeah, no. It's going to make you feel good. Sorry. I'm looking at not the sheets, like the graphic stuff. I'm looking at the mind data. No. Sorry. When we ask them if they have a personal responsibility to share their faith. So when we're talking about evangelism, whether this is communal, like, relational evangelism, that's when we got to 33%. Sorry.
That totally makes sense. I mean, again, I don't know that the key tenets of faith are necessarily what we're focusing on. In church as much.
That's true. When was the last time you heard a sermon based on?
Yeah, just the fact, the way Pastor Goodman said it, the key, the central tenet of our faith. People don't even use that term.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, people are saying they're so sad at that statistic. Sorry, guys. Sorry, that is responsibility to share their faith. Please don't be sad, okay?
I believe that. I believe that.
People aren't exclusivists. We're not exclusivists these days. You know, I don't think I have the right to tell you you're going to hell. You know, I don't think I have that right. I don't know if it's because we don't believe you might go to hell.
I just don't feel like I should say it.
I don't feel like that's my responsibility to tell you any other way is the way you're going to hell.
But I do know that, especially for Black churches, the training on sharing your faith is not something that's promoted heavily. So I might want to share my faith, but I don't know how, or I'm worried that I'm going to get into an argument and I can't get, there's so many people. I was having a conversation this week with someone who said they spent time talking with Jehovah's Witnesses as the way to up their faith. And I said to myself, I said, you know how many people would say, oh my gosh, you talk to Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh my, like you're going to backslide or they're going to, make you fall and all of that stuff. So yeah, I don't know that we train our people.
Well, evangelism is whack. Can I just be honest?
I like lifestyle evangelism.
Absolutely. It's whack. And they be like, and then you tell them this. And then
pass out this track. Make sure you say the ABCs of confession. And
what is it? The Romans
Wear the bracelet that tells you Romans 10, 9, and 10.
You can't quote the Romans road. You're not evangelizing.
But I will. Can I also say why I also feel another reason for that sharing of faith is because, especially in this day and age, the evangelical church that has made that the primary thing at the expense of a lot of our social ills and concerns.
Absolutely.
Where I believe in a robust theology that says we can deal with social justice, inequities, and those things and still be serious about sharing our faith in a way that's connected but not spooky.
Yeah.
Like I got people that they wouldn't even know I was a pastor. And then they found out like, man, I know you was a pastor. Yeah, man, I'm a pastor. I love
Then they're like, my bad. They start thinking,
no, you're good. Yeah. Do I need to change? No, you don't need to change the thing. You're fine. You can be cool and love the Lord and listen. So listen. And it's, they're like, wow, I didn't know that. So I agree. I think a lot of those may be, and that's just how I'm feeling now. Because I think the overabundance of what we've seen in this whole personal salvation thing, sharing that at an expense of something else without allowing it to be the totality of our theology. It needs to be everything.
Yeah. While Black churchgoers do have general population, we do have a concern with like sharing our faith. Guess what? We didn't have a concern with as much sharing our church. So it's okay for me to share my church, right? Because I'm not telling you you're bad. I'm just saying, hey, come hang with me. Like if I tell you I like Eddie V's and you tell me you like True Lux and I'm like, go to Eddie V's. I'm not saying True Lux is not bad. I mean, it's not good. I'm just saying try this with me. And so I think we need two things. One, we have to give people something to share when it comes to church. That's why those taglines, we grow people, we grow here, we transform, we this. That's what people end up saying. They believe it. Like if you give them the messaging, then that's how they're going to share. Like, you got to come to my church. We grow people. They don't know if nobody been growing, but that's what you tell them. And so that's what they're going to say.
They believe.
And that's what at some point, somebody want to grow. Like, you know what? I do want to grow in my faith. You know what I mean? Like, I do want to get to the point where I'm not A, B, C, D. I think we're going to have to really help messaging. I teach my clients how to share elevator pitches with their congregation so that their congregation knows how to share elevator pitch. And if you think this doesn't matter, think about how many times you have preached a sermon and somebody came up to you and told you what a blessing it was and start telling you what you said and you ain't said none of that. You're like, so either the Holy Ghost was talking to you while I was talking to you, or I'm not clear at all, and I got to go back and figure out how to preach. Like people don't always know what to take away because there's going to be something filtered based on what they're going through, based on who they've heard before, based on who they're upset with. All these things are going to go through, and it can change the message. If you want people to be able to share church, so you can then share Christ, you're going to have to give them the message on how to share church.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you think that they're sharing church because of the social context? And so it really isn't about sharing my faith. Come hang out with me, is what you said. So make it something that they want to bring people to. I think that's a big piece of it. People are willing to say, I am proud of this, or I'm excited at this. And so come with me to this that I'm excited about. I think it goes back to the intentionality, that we talked about. I'm excited because I'm a young family and we've got something for young families, or I'm a man. One of the things my dad started years ago at our church was we watched the Super Bowl together on Super Bowl Sunday. And the tagline was, have fun and, be sober in the morning. Like, because, when guys go to watch the Super Bowl, it's more about what you eat than the game in some cases. So
I was just about to say that. Yeah. So please make sure you don't think turning on the game is enough. Do something at your event that they might not be able to access at home. Like get a food truck from the best food place that everybody loves, and it's never able to just come to their door. You know what I'm saying? Like in that way and in abundance. Like you have to add an element that allows people to say, I'd rather do that with y'all than do it by myself. Because if I'm just gonna be sitting up there watching the game with some church punch, I ain't with it.
Right.
It's bad enough that some people can't have alcohol there. If you don't want to, some people do let you have alcohol. So, if you want to do that at a bar where you rent out the space, that is absolutely your business, depending on who you want to be. And I think when it comes to like, oh no, then we can't be church. I think you already got church people. Do you want to get other people is the question.
That's the question.
So, if you're looking for people who live in like all your disciples at your church live, and then you got to stay at your church because disciples are not outside of your church.
But I would also say, I think that model is the biblical model. That's one of the things that I think we do get a little spooky that we need to go back to the Jesus model. Jesus never met people as like, listen, first of all, let me tell you, I am Son of God. I am fully human and fully divine. And let me tell you something, this is the laws you need to follow. He said, all he simply went by with people like, follow me. Mm-hmm. He saw fishermen fishing, mending nets. Like, just come hang out with me. He was going by. It was always relational before he was able to even train them and teach them. It's almost the adage I had to give my grandmother, because me and my grandmother always go back and forth. And I said, Grandma, you can't clean fish in the water. Mm-hmm. There is something to be said about you got to get them in the boat.
Yeah.
The cleaning of the fish happens in the boat. You don't have the fish in the water. Oh, look at you. You need to be clean. No, you got to get them in the boat. And so there has to be something to connect. So I think what you're saying is what I'm hoping for. Like I've been telling anyone who's been willing to ask me, how do you feel about church after all this? I still feel there's an element that Black church will grow even more in this, in my opinion, because there is an element of our fellowship and relationship that, yes, you can get it online. Yes. And I think there's a large contingency that will still tap into that. But there is something innate within us that we are relational.
Oh, absolutely.
But if I can add on to that, if we follow that Jesus model, he didn't say, Zacchaeus, come to my house.
Mm-hmm. I'll go to your house.
He said, I'm going to your house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so something about taking that relationship and putting it in a context that maybe makes us uncomfortable. But like you said, are you trying to bring people in? Yeah. Sometimes you just got to go to their house.
Yeah.
But it's uncomfortable, I think. And let's go beyond go to your house, right? Because if I go to your house, I'm still a pastor, right? As your pastor, because it's an invitation kind of relationship thing. But if I go places I haven't been invited just to spend time with people, I don't get a stand, I don't get a special seat, I don't get a podium, I don't get the microphone, I don't get any special authority. And that's what we don't like oftentimes, that we are so used to getting this special treatment. We don't know how to handle it when, we don't get it. And I watch a lot of documentaries on sports, right? I don't watch sports at all, but I watch documentaries. Larry Fitzgerald said he started years ago preparing to retire. Yes. And he did that by not taking, people's opportunity. When people offer him opportunity to skip in line, he doesn't take it. He tries not to take freebies, like things that make him feel, like a celebrity or like a star. Because one day he said, he'll have to go and nobody will remember him. They won't tell him to skip the line and they won't be asking for autographs. So he needs to prepare himself for that now. And I think that's the leadership's issue with evangelism, that we don't have those, we don't have special seating and all those accoutrements. But I want to tell you this, when we talked about what worshipers wanted, we have the top 3 things. Anybody, I would love y'all all to take a guess at the top 3 things that Black churchgoers enjoy about church.
Music.
What Give me 1, 2, 3. Tell me where that comes in.
Oh, see now. Whoa, gosh, pressure. It's either 1 or 2.
Okay.
I guess.
What y'all got? What else?
The preacher in me wants to say preaching, but
right. I wanted to say word, but then I'm also wondering about the fellowship aspect too.
Okay. Everything got mentioned in the top 5. I won't tell you if it's in the top 3 yet, but something has not been mentioned. That is number 1. You're gonna love this.
Somebody in the chat said food. I love that.
Especially in the Black church, right? And that thing they love at church that their church makes. Truth. Y'all on one.
I was like, that's number 1.
Okay, that's right. It could be. Yeah, the loss of control does scare us. Going back to the last conversation. Children's ministry, truth, food, music, preaching, fellowship. Truth, nope. Leadership of the pastor was number 1.
Wow.
Say that. So the question was, what do they love the most?
Leadership of the pastor. They want their pastor to be a leader. Let me tell you why I believe this is true. We've gone through last 5 years. We've had a 4-year deficit of leadership.
Come on. Absolutely.
We want to see strong leadership. We want to see decisions made, even if it's not what you like. We want to see people who believe that they've studied enough, whether that's study enough as the president to know what's going on, or study enough as the pastor and spend enough time with God to be able to say, this is where I believe we should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you think about it, and I won't say any churches' names, there are a number of churches that are large and trending upward right now that are also cultish.
Yeah.
But that's that leadership.
Mm-hmm.
They want somebody who has answers, someone who has standards.
Absolutely.
And we relinquish these things for the sake of a congregation. When today people are saying they really need it. Now, what I'm not saying is that you should go be, ridiculous and, like try to dominate the congregation. I'm not saying that. But standards are okay. Right? To just be a leader, even if you're going to lead people into making their own decisions and you don't give them the decision, lead. We get to see this is true also when we look at the statistic that says actually emerging generations believe this most, that the pastor was still the person with the greatest authority in the community.
Wow.
Black Twitter will tell you that's not true. And I think we've relinquished it because of Black Twitter and these kind of conversations. They're like, ain't nobody thinking about that. But that's not true. It's not that they have a problem with your presence. They just have to wonder about the purpose of your presence. Are you here to get over on us, to take the show because it's something else you want from us and we don't know it? Like, what's the actual thing here? Like, what are you getting to? But they still believe you have the authority. So when it comes to that, I invite you to use your authority and influence to help these community organizations, to fund the community organizations, to bring PR and attention to the community needs. Use your authority for something in a way that doesn't make you the center of attention. Like, do your behind the scenes work as an influencer. And I think you do this really well, Goody, by being so super present in your community. You know where you go, people will follow. You know where you go, people will fund. And I think you do a really good job doing this relationally. And so until you can have a relationship, just go and use your influence in positive ways and build the relationship. You just don't have to run everything.
Right.
But you guys were right about a number of the things. So number 1, and these were almost tied, right? Number 1 was leadership at 56%.
That's
Number 2,
good.
it is good to know, huh? Number 2 was style of preaching. Number 3, and that was at 56%, so they're tied. Number 3 was music style at 55%. Number 4, friendliness of the congregation.
Yeah.
Wow.
People want to know that they can bring people to their church without giving a disclaimer.
That's right.
Yeah. That's good.
So when you allow people to stay at your church who are mean as hell, right? And always sowing discord, and all you say is That's just how they are. That's like letting a sniper come and kill off your congregation, or at least the guests.
That's good.
That's fair. Yeah, I can see that. And here's the crazy thing with that. And most of our most faithful people are sometimes our meanest people.
Yep. And I don't think we really know how to stop it.
That's probably related back to number one, because if you are going to allow that in your culture, now I got to question your leadership. Because you see this and you tolerate it or endorse it or celebrate it or excuse it, right? That's just
platform it. There'll be leaders.
Right, exactly. As long as you do that, it, I think, ties right back to number one, because now I question your leadership.
Yeah, and I can't kick you out the church, but I'm also not going to platform you and endorse you in those types of ways. And I'm also not going to pretend like it doesn't exist.
Right.
Number 5, topics preached on.
Really?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to topics preached on, there are so many topics we could all say we've never heard a sermon on.
Absolutely.
And I just don't think in the year of our Lord 2021, there should be topics that haven't been preached on.
I was gonna say that might go back to your podcast idea too. You know, not being so title driven. Just give me the topic that I can search in podcasts.
Yep. And that's how you get to archived information that people actually want and need and are looking for. And I'm going to tell you the things they hate. No, I'm not going to say hated. Things they appreciated least. And then I'm going to ask you a question before we go. So things they appreciate at least. Number 1, approach to money. Number 2, and that was at 16%. And then don't forget, these are people's, when you survey people about their own church, they're going to want to speak as favorably as possible.
Right.
Number 1, approach to money. Number 2, length of service. Number 3, programs for teens. Number 4, use of technology. Number 5, programs for kids.
That was at the bottom.
Bottom.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Money's always been interesting. It's an interesting kind of challenge. I think we always are trying to navigate. I think one of the things we try to do is I make it holistic. So it's the total aspect of stewardship. And that includes our time, our talent, our testimony, and our treasure.
Yeah.
So yes, money is important. Jesus thought it was enough that 16 of his 38 parables dealt with giving, right? You know, 2,000 verses in scripture about giving and intangible things. But we also, in this day and age, when there's such a suspicion about money and there's more, you gotta frame it in a way that, listen, it's more than your pocket. It's your heart. Is how much your time you're spending. Because if we can get this right, you know, everything else will fall in the way. So I agree. We just gotta. It's really changing the vernacular. So I may not say time.
There's more than one way to be generous.
Yeah, be generous. That's the term.
Yeah. Also, I think we have to remember that we have not had any major money scandals in the Black church in decades. I'm talking about national ones, you know, and the ones we really remember were from white televangelists.
That's
But somehow our culture has kept those tropes in movies, in songs. When T.I. and Killer Mike went to church, you're like, it's still this thing, and literally they're pulling it out of nowhere. Many of us can't act, well, we're pastors, so I guess we know pastors and preachers, but most people in the church cannot actually point to somebody who was stealing money. They may not like it. Somebody may feel like, you know, they have too much, whatever, but like legit stealing money and the things that we're accused of, we haven't seen those situations happen often, and definitely not recent. And it's not national, you know, like scandals. And we're still left to clean up this issue. So transparency when it comes to money is really going to help. Don't forget leadership. I have to tell you, when I looked at this data and a lot of the things we saw about congregations, I realized that this country right now is primed for cults.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's apparent.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's apparent. Lord, I mean, that's apparent. Especially with the stuff we haven't dealing with this last stuff we still dealing with. I know. But I never thought I would see Black churchgoers so primed for cult. And I know we have cultish situations, right? But like, if you just think about some of I'm not talking about the mega churches like Goody's Church. I'm talking about mega churches like mega online presence. I'm just trying to help y'all to think through this. Most of them are
cultish if they're not cults. They're cultish.
But the leadership deficit in our culture and in our society, and you add that to my life right now is so out of control. Somebody tell me what to do. I can't take it. I can't answer it on my own. I just need somebody to tell me what to do. And you know, a message was the church should be the house of hard questions, right? Where you could come ask hard questions. They want somebody to give them an answer. So yes, if you know, what is it? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be really good. Just give me an answer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's clear.
That's
you true. Good.
Yeah. Right. I was preaching one time to my church, and I said maybe I ought to do a sermon series one day called "How to Own Your Own Mind," and they were like, "Please do it. People need to learn because, like you said, it's either group think or tell me what to do."
And in all fairness to society and culture, we are in unprecedented times, and you know, no one ever thought, and even for pastors, right? The hardest thing to say is I don't know. Yeah. So really getting to the place where these are times the Bible has an answer for it.
Yeah,
God has an answer for it, but as far as people are concerned, I need you to give me that answer. So. Yeah.
And I think that's a good, just like you want to do something midweek, real quick, live or whatever. Tell the people to send in the questions, the toughest questions for you, you know, and do like and conversations. Like we're gonna talk about sex and this, you know what I mean? And let me say this: most people are not gonna ask you about sex,
right?
Because if I want to know about sex, I'm not gonna ask my pastor.
You're not asking your pastor.
I don't even think you have. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I don't even think you have a good sex life, even if you have one, you know, because you're a pastor. So I wouldn't be like, oh, they're gonna teach me. Nah, I'm not telling you. So don't even worry about that because I don't think those are the questions that are coming, if I'm honest. But I do think there are other hard questions that we would never get to address in a sermon. Okay, so the last thing, what is something that should be taken away from church? I actually answered this on Can I Push It? What is something that has not gone away? That's going to be our last question, guys. What is something that should have been stopped in the church but hasn't? What do we need to let go of in congregations? Be quiet, Lance.
I don't know. That's a good one.
I think the length of our services.
Okay.
I think
I always tell people, look at the secular counterpart to whatever you're talking about and see what's happened. They have never shortened series. Series are still 30 minutes or hour. Movies are still 2.
But the seasons are shorter. So
the seasons are shorter. And I think that tells something about commitment. But if you can't literally engage the people for that amount of time, shorten it. But if you can engage them, write it. You know what I'm saying? Like use it.
I think we have to look at, again, it's the traditional trappings, right? Oh, you got to have 2 songs and then you got to have this and then you have to have the, so if your service is long just to be long,
you
got to investigate. But I do think, to your point though, Bree, the reason, you know, you might not be able to get away with a 5-part sermon series any longer, and your sermon might not be able to have 6 points and a close. There is something it's right, and 7 closes. If you look at especially movie and television, they are shortening the seasons because people are not staying engaged for 10 episodes to figure out who shot JR. Like you got 4 episodes to wrap up that storyline and take me to something else. So.
Unless you're like Insecure and you give us 30 minutes and we're begging for hours. See, it's about that engagement. But let's just be honest. You know whether or not you can extend it or whether you need to shorten it, and don't be mad.
Absolutely.
Just do what you need to do.
I think what can go is long offertory appeals.
Okay. Yeah, I know what I'm giving when I come. And if I don't
in their mind
know what I'm giving. Yeah, if I don't know what I'm giving, a long appeal won't do it. But guess what will do it? Finding out a story about generous giving because somebody believes so much in my church that they decide to do it. Now that will change my mind.
That's engaging.
It is.
But when you up there talking about the same, you know, scriptures that everybody already knows and you're going to drag it out, it's like, okay, I already purposed in my heart, in my budget, what I was going to give for the month anyway. So,
or I rolled up this $1 bill anyway, and that's all I'm going to give you. People do it. We have a whole lot of dollar givers. What you got? What else should we be getting rid of?
Unnecessary announcements. Sometimes I think like
I get stuck though, right? Because we need to announce the stuff, right? I think we can do it in different ways.
Right, but where it takes 11 minutes in the beginning or in the middle of your service, I just think that's too much.
Yeah.
I think maybe, I know that everybody doesn't have access to technology, but whether you have a scrolling lower third or at the end of your service, that's, slideshow that's, hey, did you miss it? In case you missed it, here's what's coming up this week. Use your email marketing system, all of that kind of stuff. But I think sometimes that
we took it out
that's just me.
Of our service. It had to go.
Yeah, it's a lot. Someone asked if we would talk about the look of the church, right? The scenery. We will talk about that in the webinar because we did ask that, and that was really important for people, but not in the way you imagined. What else got to go, Goody?
I'm sitting here trying to think.
Not your church, okay? Like what should go?
I'm thinking period. I'm really thinking period. I think the crazy thing, the good thing about streaming, like I said, it makes us reach out, but it does put a pressure for us to be more professional.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to be on Church or Laugh. Because one thing I've had to be real intentional about is no inexperienced mic holders.
Right.
That
can go.
Yeah, like everyone doesn't have the ability to be on the mic, and we'll share the mic to a certain degree to give people opportunities. And I'm like, I think all that may be kind of out of the way what it was. You know what I mean? It's not your show. It's weird. So that's why I'm really trying to think through because some of those things are, I just think it's just powerful. Some of the, I don't know. That's a great question. I really know. The suspense is killing me. I wish you'd go ahead and just tell us.
No. This is what we're learning. I think people like testimony service. Testimony is something we took out. You know why we took it? Because we had inexperienced mic holders. But when we see research and just be not just this project, right? Like in a number of projects, when we were talking about gun violence, everything, people are like, nothing works like a testimony.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Nothing works.
An appropriately placed one.
Appropriately placed in time. You know what I mean? Like we saw the one where the lady started saying some stuff that we were like,
it's tradition and technology.
Yeah.
You don't have to throw out the tradition of testimony.
Yeah.
The technology. We pre-record them.
Yeah. But I mean, I've seen pre-recorded go really wrong and long too, right?
That's you won't.
Yeah, it takes coaching. But there's nothing like testimony service. Like I think that's something, or testimony part of the service. I think that's something we should bring back, especially when it comes to things like giving and situations like that. Healing. People need to know that things are happening in churches. People need to know.
We have to be more experiential. I think that's going to always be the good draw now. That's what people are going to be drawn to experiential churches. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. I think that's another reason we're primed for cults. We got to see this, and I do a whole part in the webinar about what it means to have an experience at your church. Go ahead.
And I think we have to go back to something that Pastor Goodman said in the beginning. This lack of intentionality in our service is something that we have to do away with. So if you want men, be intentional about making space and have a purpose for your service. Have a purpose for getting people together that says, today I really want to touch this, person or group of people, and be responsive. I think the days of I'm going to just keep coming because, all of your data has shown people are not just going to stay engaged just because I know you. So we have to, the fact that we're not sure if men will come back to church should scare everyone into God, show us how we connect.
Intentional.
At that intentionality or the lack of intentionality, hey, it's first Sunday. And first Sunday we have communion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the 4th of July. So we got to have communion. Nobody's coming, maybe we don't do it today. Maybe we do it second Sunday. That intentionality. And that's from the pastor to the music leader to everything. We have to really get back to seeking God for what he wants to say today to his people and to the world through us, like today.
Yeah. because I grew up in church and I went every Sunday, I never knew people cared about this. But I have friends who like, I can't go out and get drunk. Not tonight, because tomorrow communion, I got to make sure I make it for communion. And first Sunday was the only Sunday they had to get there. But it was really for communion. And I didn't even know that was a thing for people. Really quickly, people are saying we need to take out stuff like trying to shame people out of giving, opening prayer, one song, sermon, quick. That's that same way everybody does church. We need to give up unnecessary announcements came up. Formal services with full suits, dressed in heels. I'm not giving that up. Not giving it up. Digital announcements. Virtual singles ministry can go. That was Caleb, girl. I actually don't think you need singles ministry. I think you need singles events. If you want to just get rid of that ministry, go ahead and do it. I don't think you really need that. But listen, I'm so happy to be able to spend time with you guys. There's so many things. Oh, they say get rid of skinny jeans. I got so much to say.
Ruth? Is that database too?
Listen, no, but authenticity is. If you don't wear skinny jeans, don't do it on Sunday. I want to see you comfortable. I want to see you able to engage me. If you wear dad jeans, wear them, because I probably expect you to be in them anyway. Don't.
Now that's true. I think people do like authenticity. I had somebody tell me, I appreciate you because I didn't know that women could wear pants and Converse in the pulpit.
Yeah,
and I was like, but they're like, you're presenting as yourself. You know what I'm saying? Versus what I gotta put on. That authenticity does matter.
Yeah, it really does. And in a weird way, sometimes women really like it when I wear a robe, and I only do it when I'm usually getting fat. But I wear a robe. But women like it because they tell me it reminds them that I'm a professional. It's like a doctor coming in a white coat, and sometimes they just want to see like, she bad. Look, like this is what she does. This is like her uniform, and they like to see it. They won't see it now because I'm losing weight, and so
here comes the skinny.
I'm proud of myself. That's okay. True. But thank y'all so much for watching. I really appreciate being able to spend time with you. Of course, I'm going to encourage you to come to my webinar because it's going to be amazing. But not only do we look at statistics in the webinar, we also make sure we get to spend time giving you practical applications, practical solutions, how to make this change, what you do about the fact that this statistic is plaguing you and it's probably going to hurt your church. So we don't just give stats, we give solutions. And so I hope you join us at our webinar. We're super excited. And if you keep coming to our webinars, you should go ahead and sign up for our subscription program. With the subscription program, not only do you get the webinar, you get the PDF, you get group coaching, you get automated worship services. So you don't have to create your own innovative worship service because we create it for you. So go ahead and go to ironbmc.com and check us out because I think we're doing great things. Other than that, thank you so much to my guests. I'm always happy to have you. I hope that you guys follow them. I hope that I know you guys love them because they're amazing, but go ahead and follow them. They're doing amazing things. And I think you'd be pleased to go to any one of these worship services on a Sunday, but make sure you go back and watch your own because what I don't do is try to help people steal members. Okay. So we're going to see you next time. It will be back the next first Sunday. First Tuesday in the month. We'll be back last Tuesday in the month. We do webinars. See you soon. Bye, guys.
Peace out.
Bye.